Hello, good evening. Good evening to all brother and sister in the Dharma. And good morning to our speaker today, Venerable Thich Phap Kham, who is in the state. Okay, so good morning, Bhante. So welcome all, and thanks, Bhante, for accepting the invitations for tonight Dharma sharing. So tonight is a very special occasion in which we gather together to commemorate the great Zen master and peace activist, which is Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, or more affectionately known as Thich, and who passed away in this year, 2022, in January 22nd. So we are organizing this event so that we can commemorate Thich and also invite Venerable Phap Kham, who is a senior disciple of Thich, to share with us more story, and teachings of Thich. Before we start, let me give a very short introduction of myself. My name is Ka King, who is currently a local U lecturer and also the founding chairman of Malaysia Mindfulness Association, in which that we are trying to create awareness and promote mindfulness in a secular way. And with us today, who is a speaker, Venerable Bhikkhu Thich Phap Kham, is a senior disciple of Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh since 1987. Currently, Bhante serves as an executive director of Plum Village Foundation, Hong Kong, and as a director of its 4 working units: Asian Institute of Applied Buddhism, Plum Village Mindfulness Academy, Mindfulness Teachers Association, and Breathe and Smile, My Body Well-Being Center. The Venerable Phap Kham also established the Mindfulness-Born Peace and Happiness, MBPH, a way of well-being as a systematic approach for bringing mindfulness to professionals in a non-sectarian way. And today, we are the only and the last talk, and the only English talk of this series, Meeting with Teachers. So we are so glad to have Bhante with us. Before we start, I would like to invite Bhante to lead us on paying the homage to the Buddha.
Yes. Good evening, friends in Malaysia. We are here in the morning. So let us begin with the paying respect to the 3 chimes. Let us chant together. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante. So before we start, I just like to explain the agenda for today. I will start with more sort of like an interview with Bhante, posted to him some questions for about an hour. And then we have about 20 minutes to collect questions from the audience. You may also type your question at the end of the talk, and then we'll gather your question and post it to Bhante. Good morning, Bhante. I think many of us are very unfamiliar with you. Maybe it's the first time that we see you, Malaysian Buddhist. So could you please briefly share with us, how did you encounter the Dharma and Thich Nhat Hanh?
I was born in Vietnam in the early 1960s, and I come from a small village in Quang Tri, Vietnam. I grew up during the war, and at that time, after the unification of Vietnam in 1975. I was a teenager. And then I left Vietnam in 78 and came to the United States in 1979. Throughout my college year and also the youthful year, I was a community activist, practicing in concentrated on the youth and cultural affair, helping to bring to help with the Vietnamese American living in the United States in my area, which is a Washington metropolitan area. And it just one day that I just happened to read the book talking to the young people in their 20s of Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. I was about 24, 25 at that time. Even though the book was written 20 years before that, for the young people at that time during the Vietnam War. But the issues that Thich wrote is still relevant to the young people nowadays, even until these days, because young people, regardless of where they live, what time that the eras that they live in, they also have concerns: romantic love, loneliness, careers, what to do for themselves and for their countries. So those kind of things are very universal. So I was very impressed by the book, and it seemed like the book was also talking to me too. That's one of the things that they have a very good talent of writing books, that when the reader read the book, it seemed like he is talking to the reader directly. And so I graduated and worked as an engineer for 14 years. I came to Plum Village in 1987 at the age of 26. So it was relatively young at the time. And so I was benefited from the teachings, from the practice of mindfulness. It helped me a lot in my daily life. And so I practiced it. And since then, I have become a disciple of Thich since then. And I have been practicing as a lay people for about 10 years before I was ordained as a Buddhist monk. And what I saw was that the teachings that they have brought apply both to lay people and monastic as well. So lay people can have a chance to practice like the monastics.
Yeah, many of us do not have chance like Bante to meet with Thich personally. I think many of us would like to know more about some story or important, memorable moments that you have with Thich, especially in facing with your own difficult times. How did the teachings of Thich or his presence help you to go through the difficult times? Bante, could you please share with us some story?
Yep. When I first came to Plum Village at that time was not as big as today. Just have the two hamlets, Low Hamlet and Upper Hamlet. I came in at near the end of the summer retreat, and maybe at that time only 20 people was at the retreat in there. But I have a good time listening to Thich talk. And the talk that he gave that I remember the most were garbage and rose, and how they talk about garbage can be transformed into rose, and rose, even though it is beautiful, can be and will be turned to garbage. And we all have one difficulties in our life, and that teachings is a foundation that also is a message that they have been talking about. No mud, no lotus. Garbage can be turned to rose. Rose can be turned to garbage. And it's a process of transformation. that we all need to go through in our daily life. I remember we have so many things in our life what we call challenge, and at times we are so disappointed, we are so frustrated that we think that there's no way out. And the teaching of sit still, breathe, and everything will be okay is a reminder for me that everything would be okay as long as we are still alive, as long as we can see other things rather than our difficulties. Because when we are facing with difficulties, we are only looking into our own problem, but we do not see other things. We have for me, when I was in many difficulties that I have faced, I practiced that and I got through. When I first came to Plum village, I saw Thich coming out of a small car and he bowed to the children that come to see him. And then he took their hand and for a walk. Thich's manners of gentleness, his peaceful energy is a lesson for me. It's an inspiration for me to be calm and to take everything as it is. And I apply that to quite a few scenarios in my life. Say, for example, when our teacher passed away, that I was there for the funeral. We have, and seeing Thich laying down there, and seeing Thich before he passed away, he lived in the monastery in Tỳ Hill for 3 years. He's old. He had a stroke. He's in a wheelchair, but he is still practicing. He's still going out for a walk. He still smile. He still read people. And it's a teaching for me that regardless of where you are, the situation that you are in, life is available at this present moment. So live your best in that present moment. That's what I learned a lot from his teachings.
Thank you a lot for sharing this inspiring story of Thich. I remember reading Thich books maybe about 10 or 20 years ago when I was a university student. There was old puff white clouds. I think Thich has the ability to make the Buddha Dharma very down to earth and in a way that is not that very mystical or based on belief. And I think this is the miracle that Thich have created to make us to connect with the Dharma in a more human way. And everyone can actually benefit from the teachings of the Dharma, especially on mindfulness. So I remember the book, The Miracle of Mindfulness, was first published in 1975, which is about almost 50 years now. And Thich has been called the modern fathers of mindfulness. And Bhante, do you mind to share with us, how did actually Thich discover the teachings of mindfulness in the sutra? When was it, and in what way that Thich find that the importance of mindfulness in the core teachings of Buddha?
Thich, as I read through Thich's biography, that we have published a book about 300 pages of Thich's teachings and life, and in there Thich told the story of how he learned about the mindfulness of breathing sutra, Anapanasati Sutra. When he was young as a novice, he came to study at the Buddhist Institute. I think at that time he was about 20 years old, and he learned about the mindfulness of breathing, which is later on become the basic for the foundation of the book Miracle of Mindfulness. But he just only learned breathing in, breathing out as a summary for at the most. But he learned about some practices, and he remember going back to his press, but the application of those teachings were not realized. He memorized by heart the sutra. But during his time, later on, he moved to Saigon. He was involved in many activities. He tried to modernize Buddhism, and he was invited to do the teachings, to be editors of some Buddhist magazine. So a lot of work. But he also feel that his work did not bring a lot of fruitful results, because his teaching, his idea were quite out of time, ahead of time. Maybe 40 years later, which is maybe now is appropriate, but during that time it was so much ahead of time. He also feel resistance from the fellow Buddhist community, because it was so new, so revolutionary, I would say that. And he also worked a lot, and he felt that he was not supported, so he fall into a illness and depression. From 1958, 1959, he was sick, very sick, and he almost died. And so he needed to take care of himself. And he remembered the practice that he had learned through the mindfulness of breathing. And he practiced walking, breathing, doing things, and also the full establishment of mindfulness. And just the act of walking, sitting, going back to ourselves, being taking refuge in the breath, a thought in the sutra, help him to recover. And that's why he said he was the luckiest people in the world when he discovered the mindfulness of breathing sutra, because that sutra saved his life.
Oh, that is very, very interesting. So I just summarize. I think Thich actually discovered the teachings of mindfulness from the Anapanasati Sutra, and also from the Four Establishment of Mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutra. I suppose Thich was reading the Chinese agamas, or how did actually he find it? Is it from the Pali canons, or from the Chinese texts, or in Vietnamese texts?
At the time, I think most of the teachings were available from the Chinese literature, I think agama. But later on, those teachings also was translated from the Theravada tradition, from the Nikaya. But Thich wrote in his book, he learned a lot more. He used the teaching from the Nikaya, from the Theravada traditions, because later on the Agama there were some additions. And he used the Maha Sappatthana Sutra a lot, the first establishment of mindfulness. They come together. So when we learn about mindfulness of breathing and the first establishment of mindfulness, we need to study those sutras together. They are like twins. They're supporting each other. They are complementary to each other. You need to be studied together.
That is actually very interesting, because especially in Asia, there are many Buddhists, but many of them have not heard about the teachings of mindfulness, and not to say that how to practice mindfulness or know how to practice mindfulness. So Bhante, do you mind to share with us what actually is mindfulness, and then how can we benefit from mindfulness?
Let us go back to the time of the Buddha when he discovered mindfulness. The Buddha is the original father of mindfulness. Thich Nhat Hanh, our teacher, is the father of modern mindfulness. So during the time of the Buddha, he have practiced, he have learned many meditation traditions, especially the jhanas. The jhana, the four jhana, and the absorption thought, and the four formless meditation were basically belong to the traditions of meditation that existed before the Buddha time. So when the Buddha looking for his enlightenment, he learned from two teachers. So those things were not from the Buddha himself. It existed before. So the four jhana and the four formless meditation existed before the Buddha's time. And he practiced that, and he felt that it did not lead him to enlightenment because it helped him to have peace during the time of practice only. But in order to do that, he needs to be cut off from the things around. Because in order to practice that, we are supposed to cut off all the five input from the five sense organs and all the disturbance. After coming out of meditation, he feel pain, he feel suffering. They're still there. So the Buddha thought about what happened if I do not think about the past, I do not regret about the past, worry about the future. I live in the present moment. So, and also at that time, people were concerned about rebirth, retributions, karmas. The Buddha concentrated on living in the present moment. And so mindfulness is defined as it's the energy that helps the practitioners to dwell in the here and the now. In Chinese characters, mindfulness is written as in the bottom is the mind, is the heart. On the top, it is now. So when the mind is in the here and the now, it is called mindfulness. Before the Buddha time, mindfulness only means remember. But now, the Buddha added one element. Remember what? Remember that we are in the present moment. We are in the here and the now. And why is that important? Because by only in the here and the now, our mind can be with our body. And when our mind is with our body, we can be aware of what's happening inside of us, outside of us, and in the environment around. And when we are aware of what's happening inside and in the environment, we can have appropriate action for the situation that we are in. So the activity, the definition of mindfulness that I really like is for our mind to be in the here and the now. And how do we establish mindfulness? By practicing mindful breathing. Because the breath, when we are aware of our breath, the mind is with us. And if we are not aware of our breath, the mind is with us. And how can we aware of things around us, things inside us, if our mind is not with us? So mindfulness, my definition, is the energy that helps the practitioner to be in the here and the now. And that energy can be created by mindful breathing, being aware of our in-breath and our breath. And by being aware of our in-breath and our breath, we are aware of what's happening inside of us, outside of us, in the environment, and have appropriate action for the situation that we are in.
Thank you, Bhante. Bhante, there is some criticism for modern mindfulness, so-called, because as Bhante explained, mindfulness is the ability or energies to enable us to come back to the present moment. But we also need this type of present moment awareness, even when we are doing evil things, like robbing the bank, isn't it? So what is the difference between the Buddhist mindfulness or right mindfulness and or common daily life mindfulness that everyone need to have? What are the major difference between these two?
The Noble Eightfold Path taught about right view, right concentration, right mindfulness, right thinking, right speech, right actions, right livelihood, and right diligence. Everything have the right into it. So what is the right mean here? The right here mean with a serene mind, with a wholehearted mind. And everything, as we say that we have the actions have three parts: thinking, speech, and bodily activity. And everything starts without thinking. From the thinking, it manifests in our speech and then in our bodily actions. So the mind play a very important role here. We talk about right concentration, right mindfulness, and right view. Talking about, is there such thing as wrong mindfulness, bad mindfulness? Yes, there is. And it starts with the intention. Let's say that a robber, the bank robber, he wants to rob the bank. He make plan, he concentrate. Okay, he's going to rob a bank, so he concentrate on that. Nothing can stop him from robbing the bank. But he remember, oh, there was camera in the bank. There was this and that. So he practiced mindfulness, he practiced concentration. The first thing that he come in was to try to cut up the electricity, to cover his face. And so that mindfulness, because is he in the present moment, he concentrate on what he is doing. But why is it called wrong mindfulness or bad mindfulness? Because it starts with the intention of robbing the bank. He wants to be rich and he doesn't want to work. So he thought that robbing the bank was an easier way. And that starting with we call the mindfulness, the wrong mindfulness and right mindfulness. And basically the right mindfulness is the mindfulness that can bring peace and happiness, that can transform the pain and suffering for the people. And they can help him, her live a peaceful and happy life. And that is the right mindfulness.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bhante, for the clarification. I think it clears a lot of doubts, because a lot of people ask about this question as well. Bhante, I think you have spent a lot of time in the West, whether it's in the States, I suppose in Hong Kong as well. How did you see that the teachings of mindfulness attract Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike? Can non-Buddhists also be benefits from the teachings of mindfulness or the teachings of the Dharma?
When I look into that, when we talk about Buddhism, mindfulness is a key element in Buddhism, because it was the discovering of mindfulness that the Buddha based his Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path on. Because of mindfulness, he realized that life is suffering, not life. And also life is also happiness. The main thing is this one. There is suffering is in life, but there are also happiness in life. And the suffering in life come from old age, sickness, birth, death. But it also come from our attachment to things, that we become sufferer. We suffer when we live apart from our loved ones. We suffer because we have to live with the one we hate. We suffer because we don't get what we want. And we suffer because we cannot accept the fact that our body is decaying, our body is changing. Why we say that it is a fact of life. So the Buddha knows those kind of things from his observation through the help of mindfulness. And he realized those suffering, those pain, come from greed, which is an extreme form of attachment, hatred, which is an extreme form of hatred, aversion, and ignorance, which is wrong view, or duality point of views. So he's very clear about that, and it's only possible through the practice of mindfulness. And then he realized that, oh, beyond suffering, there is happiness in life. So that is well-being, sukha. And the way to go to that sukha, the happiness, is practice the Eight Noble Four Paths. So it's very logical. And people in the West love it. Very logical, very psychological, and very scientific. And remember, the Buddha did not plan to establish Buddhism at that time. It was an order of practice. It was a sangha. Whatever ism was established, it came later, like Catholicism, Buddhism, Muslim, whatever ism is there, and it became a doctrine. And the Buddhism was a way of life, way of living that bring peace and happiness to those who practice it. So Western people, they are practical. Nowadays, people love to practice what is bring their benefit. And they don't need to have the kind of religious ritual and ceremony that lasts a long time and doing something that they cannot confirm, they cannot. So, and the teaching of mindfulness are very related to Buddhist psychology. So I think at one time, Tai Chi, the master from China, said that the best way to go to teach Buddhism in the West was through Buddhist psychology. Because the Buddha is actually, his teaching dealt with how the mind works and how to tame the mind, our very busy mind, very delusional mind, how to tame them so that we can live. We have a clear mind, and we can be peaceful, we can be joyful. And that's why Buddhism have a big following now in the West.
Yes, I would like to share my personal encounter with Thich, although it's a very brief moment. I was in Oxford University study for my PhD 10 years back. There is a wake up, I think, what we call movement, in which the Thich Sangha, the Plum village, go to the colleges and university and teach the student, on mindfulness. And also there is one occasion which is called Sit in Peace, in which Thich and his Sangha, about 80 of them, was gathered on the stage at the Tapaka Square. I can see there are maybe hundreds or maybe a few hundreds of people gathering and sitting at the Tapaka Square. I can see in the West, people are very receptive to the teachings of mindfulness and Thich. I think this is as what Bhante shared, because the Westerner, if they can see the benefits, they would really like to learn about mindfulness or the, some of them. I know there is one professor, Professor Mark Williams, who is the former director of Oxford Mindfulness Center and also one of the founders of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. When I talked to him, he actually shared with me in his private life, he is an Anglican priest. Okay, he is a psychologist, an educator, a professor, and what we call an Anglican priest. I was very surprised how does what we call the non-Buddhist they are embracing the teachings of mindfulness. In fact, they are bringing the teachings of mindfulness to the parliament, to schools, and also to workplace and so on. I think Bhante, you are also actively involved in this movement, isn't it? Could you please share with us more on this Mindfulness-Born Peace and Happiness program? What is it about?
There are many, when we practice meditation, all Buddhist meditation started from the teachings of Anapanasati Sutra and Satipatthana Sutra, the full awareness of breathing and the 5 establishments of mindfulness. That's original teachings, original meditation practice of the Buddha. And when I study about that, I follow his teachings. And when I was in Hong Kong, I was invited to lead a mindfulness program for the healthcare and social work professional in Hong Kong. And it was held in the Center of Behavioral Health at the University of Hong Kong. And my audience is professional, medical doctors, social workers, psychologists. And so I have to find a way to talk to this professional in a non-sectarian way. Of course, we have an advantage of Buddhism is quite popular and many people practice it. So mentioning about Buddhism is not a disadvantage in the teachings, but in scientific way, we want to present the fact that it is without mentioning the Buddha, the Dharma, and how to present it in a non-sectarian way. We have a lot. And I look into the teaching of the 4 establishments of mindfulness, the mindfulness of breathing. There were the 5th and the 6th exercise. We remember that on the 5th one, we say, breathing in, I'm aware of my joy. Breathing out, I'm aware of my joy. Breathing in, I'm aware of my happiness. Breathing out, I'm aware of happiness. And Buddhism, we thought that people say that all the Buddha taught Buddhism was of depression. All they talk about is life is suffering, pain, and this and that. But the Buddha just pointed out the fact. But in the Satipatthana Sutra and Anapanasati Sutra, all the Buddha taught was about happiness. All of those things, it all starts with cultivating joy, happiness, liberation, calm. So I use the 5th and the 6th teachings of the Buddha in that sutra to call the program Mindfulness-Born Peace and Happiness. Because peace and happiness were born from mindfulness. Mindfulness is the mother of peace and happiness. And so that's the first part, Mindfulness-Born Peace and Happiness. And then it had the second part, a way of well-being. Mindfulness at work. One thing that we may need to contemplate about is when the first generations of MBCT, MBSR professional like John Kabat-Zinn, Mark Williams, they study, they learn from the monks, from the monks themselves. The teacher of John Kabat-Zinn was a Zen master in Korea. John Kabat-Zinn also came to learn to participate in the retreat led by Thich. And Mark Williams also read a lot from Thich. But so the best way, to learn is to learn in the practicing environment, whether it is a lay practice center led by the monastic or the lay people, because in that way, it can be practiced as a way of living, not a skill. So mindfulness-born peace and happiness, a way of well-being. A way of well-being means that it should be practiced as a way of life, not a skill. Because people in modern society, they want quick fix. okay, please show me in 15 minutes. I want to practice happiness meditation and then I'll be happy. No way. The Buddha, in order to develop and to discover the path, he practiced and contemplated life after life. But after that, he discovered the teachings and then he put it in a systematic way to do things. And he said he was very, very compassionate. In the end of the 4 establishment of Mindfulness Sutra, he said, if you practice this 1 year, not even 1 year, 1 month, 1 week, and even for a few days, if you practice the 4 establishment of mindfulness mindfully, diligently, you will be liberated. Peace and joy can happen. So the Buddha was very, very compassionate, and he said, go ahead and practice. He just showed us the way, but we ourselves have to do it. And so this MBPH thing is an effort to bring systematic and structured way of practicing mindfulness to the world in a non-sectarian way. So we can apply this to a whole retreat in an hotel, in a resort, at the beach, because what we are doing now in there is to practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, being aware of the body, of the feelings, of the mental formation, and of the perception, our cognitions. So those things we can practice in everywhere. We can practice everywhere. And this program, I also bring in the psychological aspect and the scientific aspect so that people see that it is a very profound and also very scientific way of practicing.
Thank you, Bhante. After talking so much on mindfulness, Bhante, do you mind to lead us on the short mindfulness practice so that for those beginners or those who do not know how to practice mindfulness can start with a simple practice? Maybe a few minutes?
Yes, let us practice for 5 minutes on the practice of mindful breathing. And the main thing is this one. We need to practice mindful breathing by being aware about in-breath and out-breath. And the way that we being aware about in-breath and out-breath is we breathe with our belly, breathing in through our diaphragm, what they call diaphragmatic breathing. Breathing in, the diaphragm will, the chest will expand and push the diaphragm down. And so our belly will rise. And when we breathe out, the chest deflates, the diaphragm muscle push it up, and so the belly will be falling. So we can be aware of our belly rising and falling to establish our mind and body in the present moment. So let us begin. Breathing in, I'm aware of my in-breath. Breathing out, I'm aware of my out-breath. In, out. Breathing in, I follow my breath from beginning to the end. Breathing out, I follow my out breath from the beginning to the end. Follow my in breath from beginning to the end. Follow my out breath from beginning to the end. Breathing in, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing out, I'm aware of my whole body. Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I calm my body. Breathing in, I'm aware of the present moment. Breathing out, I realize it's a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. Okay, we see that by going back to our in-breath and our out-breath, and this 5 minutes of practicing these exercises, we can already calm our mind and deal with the anxiety, the anger within us. When we are angry, we are sad, there is a negative energy that creates in ourselves. And by practicing mindful breathing, we can transform those negative energy into the neutral energy of breathing. And so it is very, very important that when we have difficulties, we are overcome by our feelings, by our emotion. Go back to our in-breath and our out-breath. I want to offer you a song, very simple song, that apply these teachings in our daily life. And we can we can sing along this, we can practice this song, simple one, to calm ourselves. Very simple. In, out, deep, slow, calm in, smile, release, present moment, wonderful moment. In, out, deep, slow, calm in, smile, release, present moment, wonderful moment. These teachings basically is the foundations of the relaxation exercise that you have heard a lot. And you have, when you come to Plum Village, you have been practicing this total relaxations. And the relaxation meditation practice in Plum Village is based on the first 4 mindful breathing exercise of the Satipatthana Sutra and the Anapanasati Sutra.
Thank you so much, Bhante, for sharing with us so that we have some experience, personal experience on mindfulness. Before we open up the floor for Q&A, I would like to ask Bhante one of the last questions. Since Thich have left us, but left is his legacy and also the Plum Village Sangha. So what actually is the vision and missions of Thich or the Plum Village Sangha? In realizing our vision and mission, what are the biggest challenges that we have?
As Thich said, we are a continuation of the Buddha and the Patriarch. And that's why we call Thich as the father of modern mindfulness. But mindfulness was discovered 2,500 years ago. So what Thich and Plum Village have done during the time that Thich is with us is to continue the teaching of the Buddha and the Patriarch. Plum Village, after Thich, will continue to do the same. And we are on the path of continuations. There have been great teachers before, and also there will be a great teacher after. After the Buddha, there is many great teachers appear. The same thing. After Thich, there will be many more teachers to come. So in that case, we have lost a great teachers, just like we have lost Buddha Dasa, we have lost many other teachers now. So we need to have confidence, and we need to have the trust in the teaching of the Buddha, because what the Buddha did. When we talk about the 3 refuge, I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. I take refuge in the Dhamma, the way of understanding and of love. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community that lives in harmony and awareness. As long as we have the teacher, which is the Buddha, we have the teaching, the Dhamma, and we have the Sangha, and we're practicing the way in the Dhamma, Vinaya, everything will be okay. And so we will continue on the path that the Buddha, the Patriarch, and Thich have shown us. And we will continue to do so. In the past, I think Thich has spent 40 years in the West. And then after that, he come back to Vietnam. Since then, I have been concentrating, spreading the teachings in Asia, building Sangha here and there. And so we will continue to do that. And when the pandemic is over, we will reconnect again with teaching trip. We have come to Malaysia yearly, annually. Yeah, and because of pandemic, we were not able to do so, but we will do that again. So we hope to see you in Malaysia.
Yeah, sure, definitely. We look forward to see Bhante and your Sangha. Thank you, Bhante. There is one question posted by the audience. Let me read it out. Bhante, we spend and waste so much time sleeping every day. Is it possible to practice mindfulness during sleep? If so, how? That is a question.
Actually, we do not waste our time sleeping. Sleeping is very important for our health. We are advised to sleep 6 to 7 hours a day. I sleep on average about 6 hours a day, but people are advised to have 7 to 8 hours. So 6 to 8 hours is a good time to sleep, amount of hour to sleep. We have sleeping meditations in order to, relaxation is a very good way to put ourselves to sleep. If we have a good sleep, 6 hours, 7 hours a day, it is a very good practice for our meditation. So the main thing is this one. We practice in such a way that we can have at least 7 hours a day of sleeping. And do not think that sleeping is wasted, wasted time. Because our mind is so busy, we have to keep running here and there, and the body provides a way to stop all those activity to recharge ourselves. Without enough sleeping, our health will deteriorate. And many things like the functioning of the brain, the working of the brain will be affected by it. By having enough sleep, it will help us to reduce amount the heart disease, stroke, many things. Because during our sleeping time, the body recharge. When we go to a teller in the bank, we have tellers, and every now and then they have schedule for the teller to close its window, and the teller have to rearrange what she have done an hour before, and she cannot continue. Because continue, you'll be overloaded. So resting is a very important thing for us to do, and sleeping helps us to do that.
One of the biggest challenges that we have for modern days people are busy and lazy. Okay, so we know that in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha also talk about the mindfulness or clear awareness of daily life activities. So Bhante, do you mind to share with us how to actually integrate the mindfulness practice into our daily life, besides the 5 or 10 minutes of sitting practice? Is there any practice that we can do so that when busy and lazy people can also benefit from the practice of mindfulness?
I attended the twice the 15-day Vipassana retreat. And in that retreat, we practiced sitting meditation, walking meditation, standing meditation for 12 hours a day. And we were told to bring the practice home through our daily activity. But during the practice time, we were not shown the practice of how to bring into daily activity, because all we do was to sit for an hour walk 1 hour, standing for 50 minutes and do that continuously. But how about practicing meditation while we're eating, while we're walking to the bus stations, while doing exercise, while taking the shower, while studying? So the practice of meditation, of mindfulness meditation, can be integrated into those activities quite easily, because mindfulness meditation first is the practice of mindful breathing, being aware about in-breath and out-breath, so that the mind can be with our body. But then people have the question of, if I concentrate on my breathing, how can I concentrate on my other things? I have to concentrate on my work. So I get one example of how to deal with that is, remember the time when we were young and a child, we learned how to ride a bicycle. So at first we had to have supporting wheel. And the only thing that we concerned were about how to keep the balance, the road. And so we do not aware of what's happening around us. But after some time, we learn how to balance ourselves, the supporting wheel will remove, and we can drive the bicycle without holding our hands in the handles. And we can raise our hand like this, and we can ride a bicycle. The practice of mindful breathing is like that. At first, we need to pay attention to our in-breath and our out-breath. But after that, it becomes natural. And we don't have to pay attention, constantly pay attention to the breath, but we are aware of it. Even now, when I'm talking, I'm aware of my in-breath and my out-breath. And only in being aware of my in-breath, my out-breath, I can concentrate, I can anchor my mind in the body. So we can practice mindful breathing, mindful walking, mindful washing dishes by being aware of our in-breath and out-breath. And in fact, it will have improved our productivity and our peace of mind. People have said that, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have the time to eat lunch. You see, I'm so busy, I have to eat lunch while I'm reading the news. I'm looking at the internet. Poor ourselves. When we eat, we need to have the time to eat. We do not get anything while eating and look at the screen. In fact, it will make our mind dizzy, confused. And if we do that continuously for a long time, we will develop stomach ache, ulcer. Because the energy that was supposed to spend on digesting the food were now divided to reading the news, doing things on the screen. So my advice is this: do not eat and read the screen at the same time. It is dangerous for your health.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Do we have some other question from the audience? So far, I have only received one question. So please feel free to post your question if you have any. Okay, if you don't have, maybe I will ask. Bante, is mindfulness suitable for those who suffer from psychological disorder? Is it helpful for them to practice mindfulness, or they should stop until when their condition get better, only they start to practice?
The main thing is mindfulness practice is very helpful in dealing with, in treating psychological illness. And it is my program, MBPH, Mindfulness-Born Peace and Happiness, a way of well-being. Basically, I'm developing it into a psychotherapy program. And mindfulness, as we said in the example of Thich being depressed, And he healed himself by practicing mindfulness meditation for about a year. And so mindfulness should be integrated and have been integrated into MBCT and into many other healthcare approach to deal with mind and body illness. Because mindfulness basically comes down to the practice of mindful breathing, so that we can be aware of our body, our feelings, our mind, and our perceptions. And the mind and the body are two manifestations of a human being, our being. So those things need to be considered together. And when we practice mindful breathing, it helps us to calm down our overreacted sympathetic nervous system and put it ourselves into a parasympathetic nervous mode. And the sympathetic mode is mostly deal with activate the fight or flight or freeze response, while the parasympathetic mode put into a rest and digest mode. And so by practicing mindful breathing, it will help us to slow down the breathing rate, the flow of the blood, the tensions. And this is a very effective way to deal with anger and frustration. So mindfulness should be practiced in psychological therapy.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. I think we also need to be aware if we have proper teachers and also, a trained psychologist that might be useful. Because when we practice at home on your own, there might be some of the challenges, or we do not understand and practice them in this way, may not be so effective. Thank you. So, Bhante, there is a question. Bhante, is dreaming and imagination are the same consciousness? Is dreaming and imagination are the same consciousness?
Imagination is a control state of mind, because we are looking into a phenomenon and we imagine things from that phenomenon. Dreaming is a manifestation of what has been happening in our stored consciousness, in our unconsciousness, and then it come up that have been repressed and come up in our mind through the dreams. We have heard people say, there's a song, you have been calling her name in your sleep. You know that song, right? Yeah. And in sleeping, people talk about things unconsciously and they tell what happened in their mind. And one song says that, I think it was a husband who said, the wife said to her husband, who name you calling? What is the name of the girl? Why did you call that girl name? It's not my name. So it's something very hindrance. It has been suppressed for some time and coming up. And also it's just a kind of something we have been expecting, we have been thinking for a long time, and it's come up. And we have no control about. But imagination, we imagine. It is more of cognitive, and there's a kind of imagination is something that we dream up, that is, we may know that is not true. Say here, I have, when I was young, I used to read the Kung Fu story, and I used to watch Kung Fu movie. The other style that people can fly and this and that. And so I was always dreaming of being able to fly. And I have dreams that I can actually do that. And I was aware of that. I can jump, long jump, 10 meters, and I can step on waters. And it was because that I have imagined and have wanted to do that for a long time, and then it manifests in my dream. And so, but it's not controllable, but it's one of the things that they come up. And so the dream is basically also a manifestation of what have been happening from our imagination.
Thank you, Bhante. There's one question. Being one of the most senior Sangha members of Thich, can Bhante share with us how Thich usually teach and inspire his students? And did Thich actually get angry before or not?
In our Sangha, we go by they taught everybody the teachings and everybody can practice. But being a longer term practitioners, I have experiences. And also, as we grow in the Sangha, we developed the practice and we are being more respected and loved by younger brothers and sisters. And so people listen to us more if what we share is according to the Dharma and linked to the practice. So the teachings is available to all. But of course, when we are working, there's something that they give advice to the brother and sister who work in that particular aspect to that particular project. But the advice that he gave the most was to breathe and to smile, to bring ourselves to the present moment. Because only when we know we join the present moment, that we know what to do. So the advice that he gave the most to us is just be ourselves, just to be aware and establish ourselves in the breathing and to the footsteps. And what is the second question?
Did you see that Thich get angry before?
Thich, as a human being, he did get angry and he did get sad. During the time of the Vietnam War, he was one of his students that he had entrusted his hope, his teachings to carry on his work. His name was Thanh Văn, and Venerable Thanh Văn was director of the School for Use of Soul Services from 1965 to 1972. And Venerable Thanh Văn died from an accident, from a traffic accident. And when they received the news, they were so sad because it seemed like the thing that he wanted to do in Vietnam now seemed to come to an end because of the death of his students. And he closed his room. He did not see anybody for a month. So he was in that situation. And later on, the second director coming in, and the second director also died because of an illness. So his hope was also cut off. And he actually wrote in a letter he wrote to his students, comforting those still alive and continue the work. And they said that I have been writing to comfort you, but who's here to comfort me? So they have emotion and they have been angry also. But they have been said just like the Buddha time. During the Buddha times, we heard the story of two monks. One is the Dharma teacher and one is the Vinaya teacher. And they disagree on something. And they come to a quarrel. And the Buddha come in and give advice. And his students say, "Dear the Buddha, we are a grown adult. We know what to do. And please do not intervene." And the Buddha left. And he came to practice meditation alone in the forest for 3 months. And after that, he came up with the teachings of the sixth harmony. So, and that was what was great about Thich. Thich is a human being. They have emotions anger, sadness, happiness, joy, like everybody else. And because of his practice, he was able to transform sadness, anger much faster and much more easy than what we have encountered.
Thank you, Bhante, for sharing. I think that is very important to know that even the great Zen master do experience emotions and sometimes to get sad and angry. So a lot of people think that the Buddha or the great Zen master shouldn't have any emotions or feelings. I think this is a misconception. Thank you, Bhante. Yeah. One of the very last question. Good evening, Bhante. Is it necessary to practice with the other 7 paths? I believe it's a Noble Eightfold Path, other 7 paths of Noble Eightfold Path when we practice mindfulness.
The Noble Eightfold Path have right mindfulness, right concentration, right view, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, and right diligence. They are connected to each other. But practicing mindfulness is the main key. Why? Because only when we can establish ourselves in the present moment, then our mind is with our body, and then we can be concentrated. We can have right view. We can have right thinking. And so when we practice mindfulness, we are practicing the other 7 aspects of the Eight Noble Path. So it is, and mindfulness is mindfulness of something. And in order to be mindfulness of something, we need to establish our body and our mind in oneness. The mind, one example is this. A kid is flying a kite, and we see the kite and the kid, and the connection between the kid and the kite is the string. And the string, if the string were cut off, the kite will be flying away. And the breath is like this. The body and the mind. The mind is like the kite. The body is like the kid holding the kite. And the breath is like the string. So when we practice mindful breathing, it is the breath that keeps the body and the mind together. And when the mind is with the body, it knows what is happening in the body. It is in the here and the now. So practicing mindfulness is the key. And when we practice mindfulness rightly, all the things are also practiced.
Thank you, Bhante. One of the very last question before we end the session. This is the last question. Bhante, apart from in-breath and out-breath, is the interval or short pause between the breath important?
The main thing is this one. As long as we are mindful of our breath, it is okay whether we have a short breath or a long breath. And the main thing is we do not have to hold our breath. We do not have to force our breath. That's why the first 2 exercises of mindful breathing in, I am aware of my in-breath. Breathing out, I'm aware of my out-breath. That's the first thing that we need to do. The second thing is breathing in, I'm aware of my in-breath from the beginning to the end. Breathing out, I'm aware of my out-breath from the beginning to the end. For me, when I practice meditation, 1 minute, I breathe in and out 4 times. So it's in and out breath of mine, it lasts about 15 seconds. And that's what we consider a long breath. Quiet. But there's some people, their in-breath and out-breath only 6 seconds. That's okay. But they should be able to concentrate on from the beginning to the end. Each of us have different capacity, physical capacity. So do not take other people's lens to see it as a model. We practice whatever it is comfortable for us.
Thank you, Bhante. Can we say that we should follow the natural breath instead of controlling the breath, isn't it? And practice in a relaxed way.
We should, yes.
Thank you, Bhante. I think it's almost the time for us to end this Dhamma sharing. Thanks a lot for Bhante for your very inspiring and wonderful sharing, especially on some life story of Thich, so that we also can have some experience, although many of us do not have the privilege to meet Thich in person. But through the sharing of Bhante, I believe many of us start to understand about the importance of mindfulness and how mindfulness could create miracle in our life. And we should start, by a small step, a small step a day, like practicing 5 minutes or 12 minutes of mindful breathing or body awareness per day. I believe through this practice, everyone can also enjoy, the peace and happiness that derive from present moment awareness and mindfulness. Thank you so much, Bhante. Thanks all for your attention. Before we end today's Dhamma sharing, I would like to invite Bhante to lead us on the sharing of merits.
Let us chant together the sharing of merit. It will be in English. Sharing the teachings, practicing the way of awareness, give rise to benefits without limit. We vow to share the fruits with all beings. We vow to offer tribute to parents, teachers, friends, numerous beings who give guidance and support along the path. Thank you for inviting me to give the sharing. Thank you, everybody, and hope to see you in Malaysia.
Thank you, Bhante. Hope to see you in Malaysia. And good evening, everyone. Thanks the supporting teams and organizer, YBBM and YBAM for organizing this talk. Thank you, everyone, and see you again. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.